You're really going to break up with me? Ethan's eyes flashed with anger as he grabbed my wrist. I smiled coldly and shook off his hand. I stopped loving you a long time ago. Before he could say anything, Jack walked out from behind me, gently taking my hand. He looked straight at Ethan without hesitation. She doesn't love you, Ethan. You should have known that by now. Ethan spun around, his gaze locking onto me. You're just going to leave me and be with him? Yes, I answered without hesitation. Because he makes me feel what real love is. I held the soup, my fingers trembling slightly, staring absent-mindedly at Ethan in the office, who was kissing a young woman passionately. The crowd around them clapped and cheered. Thanks to all of you for witnessing this moment. I've finally proposed successfully. Tomorrow, come join me and Nora for our engagement party. Sure, Ethan. Who doesn't know you've always been thinking about Nora? TSK, the engagement party's all set. How impatient you are. Ethan smiled with that familiar smugness, the young woman blushing as she nestled into his arms, giving him a playful punch. Lucy. I didn't know who called my name, but suddenly the lively atmosphere chilled. I steadied my breath and pushed the door open. The woman in Ethan's arms tried to pull away, but he held her tightly. I pretended not to see and spoke softly, as gentle as ever. You said you had a stomachache this morning, so I made you some soup. Let's break up. I'm tired of this after all these years, and I've always loved Nora. She's already agreed to marry me. Ethan interrupted me with a flat expression. I lowered my gaze, staring at his hand. His middle finger was already wearing a new ring. Our engagement ring, which had been with us for so long, was now floating in the glass of wine on the table. My eyes wandered to the faint hickeys on his neck, and I heard myself hoarsely ask, So what am I? What have I been to you for these 5 years? Just a way to kill time, Ethan said casually, his smile cold. Those 6 words were so ruthless they crushed me, making my heart ache. I slowly clenched the thermos in my hand. Fine, then we'll break up. Keep the soup though. Nora hasn't eaten yet. I paused, swiping past his outstretched hand, and threw it straight into the trash can. Ignoring Ethan's ugly expression, I turned and walked away, stepping out with purpose. At that moment, it felt like the 5 years of love I had for Ethan had finally worn away. The endless rumors over the years had made me anticipate this day. As soon as I got into the car, I couldn't suppress the dizziness anymore. I closed my eyes, but the vibration of my phone distracted me. It was from Ethan and his friend's chat group. Back then, it was me who persistently asked him to add me to the group, and he reluctantly did. Ethan, Lucy loves you so much and you just let her go? She's got the looks and body, doesn't fall short of a celebrity. Ethan's words stabbed at me, making my eyes hurt even more. No passion, no interest in bed. I feel like Lucy's going to come back to Ethan and willingly be his mistress. This girl has been following you since graduation. She won't come to ruin your engagement party tomorrow, If she dares ruin my engagement party, she won't even be my mistress. I could imagine how sarcastic and dismissive Ethan must have looked when he typed that. But the next second, all the messages were retracted. It seemed they had realized that there was someone in the group who never spoke up. My finger twitched slightly, and without hesitation I left the group. The last ripple in my heart disappeared. Nora. I had once seen that name pinned to the top of Ethan's phone. Back then, he lied and said it was his sister, so I didn't ask anymore. After nearly 10 years of knowing each other, this was the first time I realized that he too could be so sentimental. On the way, the nausea in my stomach suppressed most of the sadness, but the moment I got out of the car, I blacked out. When I woke up in the hospital, I was told by the driver that he had kindly brought me here. A night passed. There was only one message from Ethan. The apartment's yours and I've deposited $200,000 into your account. If you need anything, feel free to contact me. The TV was playing Ethan and Nora's grand engagement party. I heard it cost over $10 million. Yeah, the woman he'd waited for so long surely deserved the best. I turned my eyes away from the TV, closed them briefly, suppressing the bitterness in my heart, and checked out alone. It was close to the spring festival, and even the hospital had a festive air. But I felt cold and alone. Back in the apartment, I knew Ethan hadn't returned. Of course, now he must be so eager to be with Nora that he wouldn't step foot back here. When I left, I only took a few clothes with me, throwing away the ring I had worn for 5 years. The bank card he had used to support my schooling and the apartment keys were left on the table. Maybe he would never return, but at least I could leave with a clear conscience. I grabbed my suitcase and walked into the thick night, heading straight for Hacheng, the city I had always dreamed of. Almost all of my friends went there after graduation. On the plane, in my hazy state, I dreamt about the time after graduation when Ethan had held a bouquet of roses and smiled at me lazily. "Stay, Lucy, my company really needs you." In my surprise, I didn't notice the difference in his words. Because of that sentence, I gave up my plans to go to Hacheng with my friends and stayed with Ethan. I think I fell for him the moment he saved me from danger, holding me and telling me not to cry, that he would help me finish my studies. For 5 years, as his assistant, I helped him expand Lou's corporation. As his girlfriend, I woke up at 5 a.m. every day to make him soup for his stomach. The man who once had stomach pains from drinking had now become the carefree Ethan. When I left that apartment, everything, whether kindness or love, vanished. I think I no longer owed Ethan anything. Once I got off the plane, my friends, who had been waiting at the airport, dropped their luggage and dragged me straight to the bar to let loose. A few drinks later, the alcohol kicked in, and I rushed to the bathroom to splash my face with water, clearing my dizzy mind a little. I glanced down at the message my mom sent 10 minutes ago, helpless. "Lucy, the New Year's coming up. Don't forget to bring your boyfriend home to meet us. If you lie to us, you're dead." I rubbed my throbbing forehead in helplessness. How could I bring a boyfriend home when I had just broken up? I put away my phone and staggered out, not noticing I bumped into someone. I quickly apologized. Sorry. I was about to leave when the man across from me blocked my way and touched my arm inappropriately. "You're just going to apologize and leave? Come have a drink with me in the VIP room," he said with a malicious grin, trying to put his arm around my shoulders. I instinctively raised my hand and slapped him across the face. "Get lost." The man's face darkened and he sneered. "You won't be able to avoid a drink now." He raised his hand as if to strike me, but suddenly, a pair of hands grabbed his raised arm firmly. I looked up and saw a familiar yet unfamiliar face. Jack, the lawyer Ethan had consulted with for business, someone I had only met once. Jack naturally stood in front of me. "I'm Lucy's attorney. She still has a dismemberment case on her hands, and I don't mind adding yours to the list." The man's face changed instantly. He gave me a wary look before reluctantly leaving. I forced a smile. "Jack, your way of saving me is quite unique. It works, right?" Jack smiled faintly. "Thanks, Jack. Next time, I'll treat you to a meal," I said casually, ready to leave. But Jack grabbed my wrist, his eyes twinkling, and I saw his lips tremble. For some reason, I suddenly thought of Ethan's words. No passion, no interest in bed. The lump in my throat was stuck, rising and falling uneasily. I wobbled toward Jack, my drunken eyes tracing the contours of his face in a flirtatious manner. "Do you want to sleep with me?" Jack's hand on my waist grew warmer, his dark eyes gazing deeply at me, his throat moving. Just when I thought he was going to get angry, to my surprise, he nodded. "Yes." Jack pressed me against the hotel door, his warm breath brushing my face, carrying the scent of alcohol. His breathing was heavy, his eyes dark and stormy, staring intently at me, his large hand trailing along my waist. "You still have a chance to back out," he murmured. I didn't respond. Instead, I threw my arms around his neck, pressing my red lips to his. The moment I opened my mouth, Jack tightened his grip on my waist, quickly flipping the roles, making me the one in control. My eyes watered and I let out a soft sob, scratching his back as passion surged through me. A tear slipped down my cheek and into my hair. Jack gently kissed the corner of my eye, his voice hoarse. "Lucy, I want to sleep with you, but I also want to love you." My lashes fluttered, and as Jack kissed me again, I lost myself in the tenderness and affection in his eyes. The next morning, I opened my eyes to a flood of messages from my friends. I quickly got out of bed, catching a glimpse of myself in the mirror, gasping. Purple and blue hickeys marked the passion of the night before. I bent down to put on my clothes, but suddenly a large hand pressed down on the stockings I had left on the bed. I looked up into Jack's sly, almost teasing smile, and for some reason I felt a flash of guilt. "Lucy, you're not planning to run away, are you?" I tried to pull the stockings away, but Jack held onto them tightly. I rolled my eyes, trying to act tough. "We're both adults. You know what a fleeting romance is, right?" "Fleeting romance?" Jack chewed on the words before suddenly laughing, then looked at me seriously. "Lucy, I'm not some casual guy. If I sleep with you and don't take responsibility, I wouldn't mind sending you to jail. You could try suing me, I'm a lawyer after all. I flushed red, glaring at this shameless man. Last night, it was mutual. He suddenly yanked the stockings from my hands and waved them around, a smirk playing at his lips. This will serve as evidence. I'll keep it for now. If you deny it, it'll be a piece of evidence. I clenched my fists, glaring at him with frustration. But Jack seemed to be in a good mood, getting dressed slowly, following me at his own pace. When we left the hotel, I still couldn't figure it out. Just a day after breaking up, how did I end up with a new boyfriend? After settling down for a few days, with my qualifications and skills, I quickly found my footing in Hacheng. There was only one thing beyond my control. Jack had attached himself to me like a stubborn gum, even moving in after that day. When I tried to push him out the door, he calmly pulled out those stockings, looking at me with an ambiguous expression. I was so exasperated that I laughed. Who would have thought that a serious lawyer would keep stockings in his briefcase? Whether it was a gathering with friends or shopping, everyone knew Jack was like a guard dog watching me. Where's your lawyer, Jack? How come you're allowed out today? A friend teased me with a laugh. I rolled my eyes in resignation, indifferent. Who knows? Maybe one day he'll lose interest. My friend smirked knowingly. Do you know why Jack was at the bar that night? You don't think it was just a coincidence, do you? I froze, confused. What do you mean? The smile on my friend's face deepened. You should ask Jack about it. Anyway, he's been under evaluation by our sisters for 2 years now, and I guarantee he's 100 times better than that scumbag Ethan. And don't your mom and aunt always push you to bring a boyfriend home? Well, here's one for you. My eyes shifted and it dawned on me. Did Jack and my friend already know each other? I couldn't help but touch my stomach, which had started to show a slight bump in the past 2 weeks. No wonder. Jack's cooking was simply irresistible. Just then, my phone rang, and I thought it was Jack urging me to come home. But it was actually Xiaoli from Ethan's company. I suppressed the curiosity in my eyes and picked up the phone. Lucy, when are you coming back? You don't know how useless the secretaries are without you. They can't even handle a task without making mistakes. I'm swamped here. You should come back soon. Xiaoli, I've already handed in my resignation to Ethan. I'm not going back. You and the secretaries can try to get along better. Okay then. In the office, Xiaoli glanced nervously at Ethan, who was sitting nearby, his face dark with anger. Ethan, I think you're more effective than me at handling this. How about you give Lucy a call? Ethan sneered, his voice cold and filled with suppressed rage. She's nothing. The company can still run without her. He slammed the door shut, then kicked over a potted plant with a violent motion, his face a picture of fury. Well done, Lucy, you'd better hold on. When you come crawling back to me, we'll settle the score one by one. On the desk lay the apartment keys and the bank card I had left behind. Jack somehow had learned that I once gave Ethan a ring. That night, I lay sweating in his arms, when I suddenly felt a coolness on my finger. I looked down and saw a diamond ring firmly placed on my middle finger. Before I could take it off, Jack locked our fingers together with force, and I noticed that he too was wearing a similar ring on his middle finger. Jack's voice was hoarse. Lucy, we didn't meet for the first time 2 years ago. I froze, suddenly remembering something my friend had said. I sat up, looking at him. Jack, do we know each other? Jack gently fixed my messy hair and gazed at me with tenderness in his eyes. You saved me back in middle school on the street corner. A thug had stolen the medicine I was buying for my sister, and you helped me get it back. A familiar scene flashed in my mind, and I quickly asked, what happened to your sister? Jack was silent for a moment. She died. I was too late. I felt the deep sorrow in Jack's voice and gently hugged him, my heart aching. He nestled into my arms, a bitter smile playing on his lips. After becoming a lawyer, I sent all those thugs to prison. I've been looking for you, but when I found you, you were already with Ethan. I tried to make friends with the people around you, secretly kept an eye on you. They said you broke up and were coming to Hacheng, so I rushed to the bar. I finally understood what my friend had meant. He reached up to touch my cheek, smiling with determination. I've waited this long for you. I can wait 2 more years. He was smiling, but in that moment, I felt a pang of sympathy. It was as if I saw the 5 years I had spent chasing after Ethan in him. Maybe I could give him a chance. Maybe I could give the past 5 years of my life a chance. I gently traced the ring on my finger, then spoke slowly. Jack, in a few days my friend's birthday is in Hacheng. Would you come with me? Ethan's eyes suddenly brightened, staring at me with intense focus. I awkwardly shifted my gaze. If you don't want to, it's fine. I can't. I want to. He interrupted me. After Jack and I finalized our work plans, I booked a flight back to Hacheng. I had been with Ethan for 5 years, and many of our friends overlapped. For example, at the birthday party of my friend Xiaoqi, I ran into some of Ethan's close friends. When they saw me holding Jack's hand, their expressions became complicated. As we were chatting, the door to the private room was suddenly pushed open. Xiaoqi smiled awkwardly and quickly went to greet Ethan. Ethan, didn't you say you weren't coming? Why are you here? Ethan's face was as dark as a storm cloud, sending chills down everyone's spine. He shoved Xiaoqi aside and marched straight toward me. Come with me, Lucy. Before he could reach me, Jack pulled me behind him. Jack held up his ring finger, showing off the diamond ring, and casually pointed to the hickey on my neck, a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Ethan, if you're harassing my fiancé, I wouldn't mind sending you to the police station for a couple of days. Ethan clenched his fists tightly, his eyes bloodshot with rage. He grabbed Jack by the collar. You dare steal my woman? You're asking for trouble, Jack. Jack's expression remained unchanged as he slowly rolled up his sleeves. I knew Ethan too well. This was the look of someone on the verge of losing control. I quickly stepped forward and pushed Ethan away. We've broken up, Ethan. Please respect yourself. Then I grabbed Jack's hand. Let's go. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the room. I turned around in shock, my face paling. Ethan, in a fit of rage, smashed the bottle on the table. Glass shards flew everywhere. He picked up a broken piece of glass and blocked the door, his expression dark. Today, Lucy, you can only leave with me. Everyone around us shuddered, too scared to intervene. I was furious, my face turning white with anger. Jack's expression grew cold. Before I could even react, he lunged at Ethan, kicking him in the stomach. The two of them grappled with each other. Someone, break them up! I shouted to the stunned group behind me. Chaos erupted and everyone rushed to separate them. I ran to Jack's side, gently touching the bruise on his lips, my face filled with concern. Without hesitation, I marched over to Ethan, raised my hand and slapped him hard across the face. Looking into his shocked eyes, I gritted my teeth. Ethan, we've broken up. That slap is to wake you up. The room fell silent. Ethan's jaw clenched and his fists cracked as he shouted in anger. Lucy, are you blind? I'm hurt too. If this is just to provoke me, to make me jealous of you being with Jack, fine, I admit it. I've broken up with Nora. Are you happy now? Hearing Ethan's words, I couldn't hold back. I stepped forward and slapped him again, my anger barely contained. Ethan, you've been playing with feelings all along. You'll get what's coming to you. Ethan froze. For the first time, I felt that those 5 years of my sincerity meant nothing. I turned and walked away, supporting Jack. Behind us, Ethan's furious voice echoed. Lucy, if you leave this room, you'll never have a chance to come back to me. Jack's expression remained unchanged, but his grip on my arm tightened. I kept my face expressionless, continuing to walk with him. Behind us, the sound of the glass bottle breaking and Ethan's furious screams echoed. Go to hell. You really think I can't live without you? Lucy, one day you'll come crawling back to me. On the way home, it started to rain lightly. Without an umbrella, Jack took off his coat and wrapped it around me, covering me completely. He got soaked, but I didn't care. That night, Jack came down with a high fever. I stayed by his side, changing his towels every so often. His face flushed and he gripped my hand tightly, wrinkling his brow in pain, murmuring repeatedly, Lucy, don't leave me. Don't leave me. I reached up and gently smoothed his furrowed brow. I won't leave. Maybe he heard my words, as Jack nuzzled my palm, his breathing gradually calming. I leaned against his chest, falling into a deep sleep. The next morning when I woke up, Jack was already gone. I came out to find that Jack had made breakfast, and aside from his bruises, his face had returned to normal. I sighed in relief as he smiled and pinched my cheek. I'm fine now, don't worry. Let's eat. I want to take you somewhere. I raised an eyebrow, feeling a sense of anticipation. After we ate, Jack covered my eyes and led me forward slowly. When he took his hands off my eyes, I gasped in surprise. An amusement park. A place I had always wanted to visit. You... I looked up at him, my lips trembling. Jack smiled as if he knew exactly what I was going to ask. I've been following you on Weibo for 2 years. I've always wanted to bring you here. Tears shimmered in my eyes, and my heart softened. So this was what it felt like to be cherished. My Weibo was connected with Ethan's, but it was me who followed myself on his phone. But it seemed like he never actually looked at my posts. I had once asked Ethan to take me to the amusement park, but he had dismissed it as childish, and I never brought it up again. Jack took my hand, gently wiping the tears from the corner of my eye. Let's go, we're going to explore every corner of this place today. This day was the happiest day I'd had in a long time. Later, my phone rang, showing Ethan's name on the screen. Jack saw it too, and his smile quickly faded into a straight line. I answered the call, my face emotionless as I clicked to end the call and added him to the blacklist. I looked at Jack, raising an eyebrow. Are you satisfied, Jack? Jack's eyes gleamed with a brief smile, but he kept a serious face. Keep it up. I suppressed my laughter, clinging to his arm. By the time night fell, at the top of the Ferris wheel, I pulled Jack's collar toward me and gently kissed him, feeling my heart beat faster. Jack froze for a moment, then wrapped his arms around my waist, deepening the kiss. But just then, someone ruined the warm moment. The shrill sound of a phone ringing made both Jack and I frown in annoyance. I pulled out my phone and reluctantly answered the call, hearing Xiao Qi's anxious voice on the other end. Lucy, you need to come to the hospital. After you left that day, Ethan went crazy drinking, and now he's in the hospital with a bleeding stomach. He wants the soup you made for him. My face froze with coldness, and a hint of detachment slipped into my tone. I'm not his doctor or nanny. Why would I go to the hospital to make him soup? Don't bother telling me about his problems again, Xiao Qi. I ended the call decisively. In the hospital, Xiao Qi looked helplessly at Ethan, who was pale, forcing a weak smile. Lucy must be just angry. She calmed down soon. Ethan's face was dark as he looked at the phone in his hand, which had been blacklisted. He suddenly smashed it against the wall, his chest heaving with anger. He couldn't understand how, in just a few months, Lucy could stop loving him. How could she be with Jack? Don't be like this, Ethan. Yeah, Ethan, don't you know how much Lucy loves you? She's probably with Jack just to make you mad. I'll tell you, it's because of what you did last time. She's been with you for 5 years, and then you just dumped her and got engaged right away. Lucy even said she was waiting for you to propose. Little girl, if you want to win her back, just show her you love her. It'll work out, right? Ethan's eyes flickered and his face softened slightly. Seeing him calm down, his friends exchanged glances and quietly left the room. Ethan clenched his fists, his eyes flickering between anger and confusion. Yes, Lucy had once rested her head on his shoulder, imagining their wedding, their children. Lucy wanted to marry him. He always knew. But Nora? That was just a past obsession. Now that he had her, his thoughts were all on Lucy. He never wanted to give up on her. Back when the company was starting, Lucy stayed in Hacheng for him. When those older guys tried to get him drunk, she, a girl fresh out of society, stepped up without hesitation to help. When they went home, she always made him stomach, warming soup for 5 years straight. No matter how late he came home, there was always hot food on the table. She never complained. He was afraid of marriage, of being tied down. But if it were with Lucy, it didn't seem that bad. If Lucy wanted stability, he'd give it to her. After Ethan was discharged from the hospital, he used his connections to find a retired diamond ring maker. He showed the sketches he'd drawn all night. Can you make this ring? Money isn't an issue. The old master, wearing reading glasses, carefully examined the sketch and slowly nodded. For the first time in a long while, Ethan's weary face showed a bit of joy. With this ring, he thought he and Lucy could get back together. His Lucy, who had always been soft-hearted and truly loved him. It took Ethan 3 days to get the ring. Holding the exact same ring he had thrown into the wine glass, Ethan's hands trembled with excitement. He ordered a flight to the southern city immediately. After spending more than half a month away, I finally gave in to my mom's repeated requests and took Jack on a long break. We headed straight to my hometown to meet the parents. Throughout the journey, Jack, usually so calm and composed, was unusually nervous. His hand, holding mine, was slightly sweaty. I smiled and reassured him. When we arrived, I hooked my arm through Jack's and hurried back home, calling out cheerfully, "Dad, Mom, I brought your son-in-law back." But the smile froze on my face when I saw the figure on the couch. "Ethan?" I furrowed my brows, a hint of wariness in my expression. "What are you doing here?" Jack immediately tightened his grip on my hand, trying to ease my unease while glaring at Ethan. Seeing our intertwined fingers, Ethan's face darkened a little. Before he could speak, my mom walked out, smiling. "Ethan's a great son-in-law. He even showed me photos of you two together." "Wait, who's this?" My mom's eyes lit up when she saw Jack, her gaze flickering between Ethan and him, clearly confused. "What's going on here?" I clenched my fists, struggling to suppress my anger, and pushed Jack gently forward. "This is your real son-in-law." I turned to look at Ethan coldly. "You, come with me." Turning on my heel, I motioned to Jack. "You talked to my parents for a while, they're really nice." Jack shot me a concerned look, which I reassured with a smile before he nodded. Ethan silently nodded at my mom, following me down the stairs. Once we reached the lower floor, my carefully suppressed rationality finally snapped. I raised my hand and slapped him hard across the face. My body was trembling and my eyes were filled with coldness. "Ethan, isn't hurting me enough? Why are you coming here to disturb my parents? What do you want?" Ethan grabbed my wrist without a hint of anger, and for the first time, I saw an urgency on his usually indifferent face. "No, Lucy, you've misunderstood. I just wanted to visit your parents. See, I brought this ... Ethan carefully held up the ring in front of me and my eyes widened. This was the same ring I had thrown away. He knelt before me, his eyes full of love and tenderness that he didn't even try to hide. "Marry me, Lucy, you've always wanted to marry me, right? I'll devote myself to you. Let's live a good life together." I stared at him for a long time, then let out a bitter and sarcastic laugh. "So you always knew I wanted to marry you?" Ethan's eyes flickered, but he couldn't find words to reply. I interrupted him coldly. "Ethan, you really disgust me now." I watched his face grow pale, and it made me laugh. When I had him, he treated me like an object. Now that he's lost me, he clings on desperately. I closed my eyes, looked at him seriously and said, "I really don't love you anymore, Ethan. Let's part on good terms." Ignoring the shocked look on his face, I turned and walked away without hesitation. But just a couple of steps in, my wrist was suddenly grabbed, and Ethan slammed me against the wall. The grip on my shoulders was so tight that it made me wince. His eyes were bloodshot. "It's impossible! Who doesn't know you love me the most? In just a few months, how could you suddenly say you don't love me? Lucy, you can't stop loving me, right?" His tone carried a barely perceptible plea. I had never seen Ethan like this. But it was too late. I stared back into his eyes, calmly correcting him. "No, it's been 5 years. In those 5 years, you drained all my love for you. I'm not someone without dignity." It's not true, Ethan muttered, his brows furrowing in confusion and panic. I pushed him impatiently, but he didn't budge. His hand tightened on my shoulder. "Let go." He stared into my eyes, his voice dark and slow. "I don't believe it. You're just angry. You'll get over it." He gripped my arms tightly and leaned in, his warm breath against my face. My face paled, feeling disgusted, and I screamed in panic. "Help! Help!" Just then, the pressure on me suddenly disappeared. I looked up and saw Jack, who had rushed from behind and knocked Ethan to the ground, landing punch after punch on him with reckless abandon. I immediately grabbed my phone and called the police, pulling Jack away from Ethan. "Stop, Jack! Stop! I'm scared." At the sound of my voice, Jack froze mid-punch, panting heavily. He stood up, his red eyes meeting mine as he pulled me into his arms, his voice hoarse as he comforted me. "Don't be scared, I'm here." Ethan remained on the ground, looking at me with a fragile gaze. "I'm hurt, Lucy." In the past, hearing him say he was in pain would have made me run to him without hesitation. But now, I just felt stupid for ever caring. I ignored his words, burying myself in Jack's embrace. Seeing that I didn't move, Ethan's gaze darkened, a self-deprecating smirk tugging at his lips. The ring, once so carefully kept, now lay in the dirty water, its color indistinguishable. The police station was only a street away, and within 2 minutes they arrived at my house. "Who reported the sexual harassment?" I immediately stepped forward, addressing the officers, my voice clear. "It's me. He tried to kiss me earlier and has been relentlessly bothering me." The injuries on his face were caused by my boyfriend in self-defense, but I'll cover the medical expenses. However, please make sure I never have to see him again." I added quickly, "There's footage from the surveillance cameras, so the evidence is all there." As the officers took Ethan away, he turned and glanced at me, his lips trembling. In his eyes, I saw shock, hurt, and something broken like a belief shattering all at once. He realized I had truly stopped loving him. I averted my gaze, turning my attention to Jack, who was standing next to me holding me tightly. Jack, ever so protective, smiled at me and said, "Let's go home and see your parents." After Ethan was detained, I heard he would be held for 10 days. During that time, Jack had grown even closer to my parents. They sang his praises endlessly, even treating him with more warmth than they did me. On the first night Ethan was released, I was pulling the curtains when I caught a glimpse of him standing under the street lamp, smoking one cigarette after another. The light stretched his solitary figure, and for a moment, it almost seemed like the world had swallowed him up. It was as if Ethan felt my gaze because he slowly lifted his head. But before I could react, Jack, his presence almost overwhelming, pressed against my back. With one swift motion, he closed the curtains, pressing me against the window. His kiss was urgent, intense. "Forget about that idiot," he whispered against my lips, his voice hoarse with frustration. My mind went blank, my body losing itself in his touch. Gradually, I stopped thinking about Ethan and his desperate gaze. The next morning, I received a letter. I opened it, and a set of keys fell out. I recognized them immediately, the keys to the apartment I had lived in for 5 years. "I'm sorry, Lucy, I've been a real jerk. Like you said, I've received my punishment. There will never be anyone who loves you like I did. I'll wait for you forever. This apartment was always meant to be yours." I wasn't sure when Jack had come up behind me, but I heard him scoff as his eyes locked onto the letter in my hand. With a mischievous smile, I waved the letter in the air. "You better treat me well, or who knows." Before I could finish my sentence, Jack's lips crashed onto mine, cutting me off. I didn't even realize the letter had fallen from my hand, lost in the moment. I locked the keys away in the drawer, keeping them with all the memories of those 5 years. Time passed, and the spring festival arrived quietly. After dinner, I eagerly pulled Jack outside to set off fireworks. He gently cupped my cold, flushed face with his palm, pulling the scarf from his neck and wrapping it around both of us, keeping us close together. Jack rested his forehead against mine, and amidst the loud fireworks, I could clearly hear his voice. "Lucy, this is our first year." I smiled, pecked his lips lightly, and exclaimed, "We'll have many, many more years ahead of us." Under the bright, colorful sky, we held each other tightly, the fireworks illuminating our faces, and in that moment, I knew I had found the one who would always be by my side. The past, with all its pain and betrayal, was now locked away in the past. What mattered now was the future, and the life we were about to build together.